canine, German Shepherd becomes a mother for the first time. But the vet was shocked when she gave birth to over 8 puppies. She was trained to track down criminals, detect explosives, and protect officers with her life. But no one expected that beneath her hardened canine exterior, Sergeant Nova had a mother's heart. After years of service in a tough inner-city police unit, Nova was finally retired, and just weeks later, she began showing signs of pregnancy. Her handlers were thrilled. But nothing could have prepared them, or the local veterinarian, for what would happen next. The night Nova went into labor, the clinic staff gathered to welcome what they assumed would be a modest litter of 4 or 5 pups. But as the hours passed and the puppies kept coming, even the experienced vet's hands started to tremble. 8, 9, 10, then 11. And then, just as they thought it was over, Nova gave Yeeb one final push. What they discovered in that final moment left everyone in the room speechless. Before we begin, make sure to subscribe to the channel, like this video, and turn on notifications. Stories like this one, of strength, surprise, and unconditional love, deserve to be told, and your support helps us keep sharing them with the world. Get ready for a journey that will move your heart and change how you see these heroic dogs forever. Sergeant Nova had retired just 3 months before the first signs appeared. She was a legend in the Phoenix Police Canine Unit, a sable-coated German Shepherd with piercing amber eyes and a record that spoke for itself. In her 7 years of service, she had helped rescue abducted children, sniffed out over a dozen illegal weapons, and once even shielded her handler during a gang shootout. Everyone in the precinct called her the Shield. Her handler, Officer Jeremy Brooks, was the only person Nova had ever truly bonded with. After a near-fatal mission, he made the decision to take her home with him for good. Jeremy lived alone on a small ranch just outside Flagstaff. He had no wife, no children, just acres of open land and a deep, aching silence that Nova quickly filled. But within weeks of bringing her home, Jeremy began to notice something different. Nova, once always alert and sharp, now moved slower, slept more, and started displaying odd behaviors, nesting in the corner of the living room, whining at night, even turning down her favorite kibble. At first, Jeremy thought it was stress or trauma from retirement. The shift from daily adrenaline to calm pastures couldn't be easy. But then, her belly started to swell. He brought her to the local vet, Dr. Hannah Keene, a no-nonsense woman in her late 50s who had seen just about everything. She took one look at Nova and raised an eyebrow. "Jeremy, was she ever around an intact male?" she asked. Jeremy blinked. "Not that I know of. She was always supervised. She's a working dog." "Well," Hannah said, scanning the ultrasound, "unless she's carrying a football in there, I'd say she's about 5 weeks pregnant. And judging by what I'm seeing, this won't be a small litter." Jeremy felt the world tilt beneath him. "You're saying Nova's gonna be a mom?" Hannah smiled softly. "I'm saying she already is." For the first time in his life, Jeremy was speechless. The next few weeks were a blur of preparation. Jeremy transformed the old barn into a makeshift birthing den. He researched everything he could about whelping, bought blankets, heat lamps, even installed a baby monitor. Nova, for her part, seemed to understand. She stayed close to him, followed him everywhere, and nuzzled his hands whenever he got overwhelmed. And then, one rainy Friday evening, it happened. Nova began panting heavily just after sunset. Jeremy rushed her to Dr. Keene's clinic. The staff cleared out a room just for her. The birthing started slowly. 1 pup, then 2, then 3. All healthy, all squirming and yelping softly. Jeremy sat in the corner, nerves twisted like wire. But Nova was calm, focused. Her body knew what to do. By the 7th pup, Hannah leaned in and whispered, "This is more than I expected." Jeremy wiped sweat from his forehead. "You and me both." Then came 8. Then, and many in Alma. By number 10, Hannah's hands were trembling slightly. Is this normal? Jeremy asked, his voice cracking. Hannah exhaled. Not unheard of, but this is rare. Very rare. The 11th pup arrived just past midnight. Everyone in the room exhaled, thinking it was done, until Nova let out one final grunt and pushed. Hannah's expression changed. She reached out gently, and her eyes widened. Jeremy, she said softly, you need to see this. He stepped closer, heart racing. In her hands was the smallest puppy of the entire litter, but it wasn't like the others. Its coat was entirely white, not cream or pale beige, pure snow white. Its ears were smaller, and its breathing faint. I've never seen this in my career, Hannah whispered. A white German shepherd born to a sable mother in a litter of 11? This is a miracle. Jeremy kneeled beside Nova and stroked her head. She licked his hand, then turned and gently nudged the white pup closer to her sin. Even exhausted, she was still the shield. She waited to bring this one into the world, Jeremy whispered, like she knew. And that's when he realized Nova hadn't retired. She'd just started a new mission. The clinic was quiet the next morning, lit only by soft strips of morning sunlight peeking through the blinds. Nova lay in the corner, her breathing steady, her amber eyes alert despite the exhaustion in her limbs. Around her, 11 tiny bodies wriggled and squirmed, each one nudging their way toward her warmth and milk. Jeremy sat nearby, barely able to believe what he was witnessing. I don't think I've slept in 24 hours, he murmured. Dr. Hannah Keene handed him a mug of coffee. Welcome to parenthood. He smiled, dazed and overwhelmed. The white pup, smaller than the others, still fighting for strength, lay curled under Nova's chin. Every now and then, she would nudge it with her nose, just enough to keep it close. It's a miracle she survived, Hannah said quietly. Most dogs don't carry 11 full-term puppies, let alone deliver all of them without complication. Nova's never been like other dogs, Jeremy replied. She never needed saving, but she always saved others. Hannah nodded. She's still doing it. The news of the rare litter spread quickly. Within days, the small-town vet clinic was flooded with visitors, off-duty officers who had worked with Nova, neighbors bringing blankets and toys, even a retired handler who had once trained her during her first year. Everyone wanted to meet the heroic mother and her extraordinary pups. But while the excitement grew outside, Jeremy found himself worried inside. The white pup, whom he had quietly started calling Hope, wasn't gaining weight like the others. Her movements were weaker, her suckle slower. Despite Nova's fierce protection, she was falling behind. Jeremy brought it up with Hannah during their third checkup. She's not eating enough, he said, concern deep in his voice. Hannah examined the puppy carefully. She's struggling, yes, but she's fighting, and you're helping. I don't feel like I'm helping, Jeremy admitted. Hannah gave him a knowing look. When Nova was in the field, she didn't need you to do everything. She just needed you to stand beside her. That's what you're doing now. Still, that night Jeremy couldn't sleep. He kept going back to the barn, flashlight in hand, checking on the pups every hour. Around 3 o'clock a.m., he found Nova awake, her eyes glowing in the dark as she cradled Hope closer with her front leg. Jeremy knelt beside her. Hey girl, he whispered. You know she's different, right? Nova stared at him, then looked back down at the pup. You knew the moment she was born, he said. That's why you held on for her. He reached into the pen and gently lifted Hope in his hands. She was tiny, barely half the size of her siblings, but her heart beat strong beneath her chest. Then I guess I'll hold on too. In the following days, Jeremy began hand-feeding Hope with a small bottle, following Hannah's instructions. Every 2 hours, day and night. He made a schedule on the fridge, even skipped a police reunion to stay home and monitor her. But what truly kept Hope going wasn't just the milk. It was Nova. Every time Jeremy fed her, Nova would be right there, watching. When Hope would cry softly after feedings, Nova would nuzzle her until she calmed. When one of the larger pups rolled over her, Nova gently nudged them aside. Jeremy had never seen a working dog transform like this. "She's not just protective," he told Hannah one morning. "She's maternal." "She's grieving, Jeremy," Hannah said gently. "You told me Nova lost her partner in the line of duty, right?" "Yeah, 2 years ago. She's loved hard, and she's lost. This is her way of healing." That night, Jeremy stood alone under the stars, the Arizona sky stretching endless and blue above him. He watched the barn, lit from within by soft amber bulbs. Inside, 11 lives had begun, and one life, one very small, very special life, was reminding him of something he hadn't felt in years. Hope doesn't always come loud or strong. Sometimes it comes in the smallest heartbeat, in the faintest cry, in a white pup born last. The Arizona monsoon season arrived early that year. It began with a sharp drop in pressure, sudden wind gusts, crackling thunder in the distance, and a dark sheet of clouds crawling over the horizon like an advancing army. Jeremy stood at the barn's entrance, phone in hand, scanning the weather alerts. Red warnings blinked across the screen. Flash floods expected. Stay indoors. Prepare for power outage, he turned to Nova, lying peacefully with her pups in the hay-strewn corner of the barn. 11 tiny bodies curled around her like petals around a flower. Even now, she stayed watchful. Her ears perked with every distant rumble. Her instincts had never dulled. Jeremy crossed the barn, crouching next to her. "We might have to bring everyone inside the house tonight, girl." Nova gave a low woof and rested her chin atop little Hope, who had grown slightly but still trailed behind the others. Her fur was whiter than snow now, her eyes barely open. But she was alive. Because Nova refused to give up, and because Jeremy hadn't either. By dusk, the rain arrived in sheets. The wind howled like a warning, and water began to pool near the foundation of the barn. Jeremy carried the pups 2 by 2 into the house, laying them in a makeshift whelping pen by the fireplace. Nova walked beside him every trip, never letting him take more than 2 at a time before checking the pen and her babies. When it came time to move Hope, Jeremy hesitated. She was so small, so fragile. "I've got her," he whispered, wrapping her gently in a towel. Lightning cracked the sky. Suddenly the power went out. The lights blinked once and died. Only the storm remained, howling outside, pressing against the windows. Jeremy rushed to light the emergency lanterns while Nova circled the pen anxiously. She nudged the edges, checking every pup, tail stiff, body tense. Then came the sound no one expected. A crash, metal twisting, wood cracking. Jeremy turned in time to see a tree limb, heavy and rain-soaked, snap through one of the barn's exterior walls. Water began flooding in. "Damn it," he muttered. "That was close." But something felt wrong. Nova wasn't at his side. He turned, heart racing. She was gone. He sprinted to the barn, slipping in the mud, flashlight swinging wildly. Rain lashed against his skin, thunder shaking the ground beneath him. The barn's door hung open, bent and broken. Inside, part of the roof had caved. The hay was soaked. Tools lay scattered across the ground like fallen weapons. "Nova!" he shouted. A low bark came from behind a stack of crates. He found her half buried under splintered wood and debris, one hind leg pinned beneath a broken beam. She was trembling, but alive. Her ears twitched, her eyes locked on him, defiant even in pain. "Oh God." Jeremy dropped to his knees. Why did you come back? He spotted something beside her, something white, moving faintly. Hope. Nova had gone back for her. In the chaos of moving the pups, Hope must have slipped into the shadows. And when Nova noticed, she didn't hesitate. Even injured, she had crawled through wind, rain, and danger to save the smallest of her litter. Jeremy fought through the panic and lifted the beam. Nova let out a sharp cry, but didn't bite. He slid her free, picked up Hope with his other hand, and carried them both through the mud as the storm roared around them. Back inside, he set Nova down by the fireplace and wrapped her in warm towels. Hannah arrived minutes later, soaked but calm, her hands already gloved and assessing Nova's leg. It's a clean fracture, she said. She'll need rest. But she's lucky. You both are. Jeremy nodded, his face pale, his hands still trembling. Nova turned her head slowly toward Hope, who was curled up against her once again. She never gave up, Jeremy said, not even when it hurt. Hannah smiled. She's not just a hero, she's a mother. And Jeremy, as he sat beside her in silence, knew something deeper now. Bravery wasn't always found in the field. Sometimes, it was a broken dog dragging herself into a collapsing barn because her smallest pup had been left behind. The storm lasted through the night and into the next morning. Rain hammered the roof like a war drum, and the world outside seemed submerged in gray. Inside the cabin, though, something sacred was unfolding. Nova lay quietly by the hearth, her breathing shallow but steady. Her bandaged legs stretched out carefully, wrapped in clean gauze by Hannah's steady hands. The fire crackled beside her, throwing golden light across the room. The whelping pen sat nearby, filled with soft whimpers and tiny kicks. 11 lives tangled in sleep, unaware of the chaos that had nearly swallowed them. Jeremy hadn't left Nova's side since the rescue. He sat cross-legged on the floor, hoodie damp, eyes fixed on the one who had once saved his life in a dark alley years ago, and who had now risked hers for the smallest member of her litter. He reached out and touched her ear gently. Nova opened her eyes. The look between them wasn't dramatic or loud. It was quiet understanding, an acknowledgement. She'd done what no one else could. She went back for Hope, Jeremy whispered to Hannah, who was drying her hair by the fire. Even with her leg pinned, she didn't think twice. Hannah looked up from her thermos of coffee. She's not just protecting them, she's teaching them what courage is. Jeremy nodded. She's always been like that. First to act, last to leave. He looked over at the pen. Hope was nestled between two of her siblings, slightly smaller, but no longer the smallest. Her body rose and fell steadily, her fur dry and glowing faintly in the firelight. I used to think she didn't have emotions, Jeremy admitted. That she was just trained to be loyal, efficient, a machine. Hannah shook her head. Jeremy, dogs don't love because they're told. They love because they choose to. There was a long silence. Only the soft sound of the fire and the rhythmic breathing of the pups filled the space. Jeremy finally said, You know, when I brought Nova home, I thought I was doing her a favor. Giving her peace, a quiet place to fade out. He swallowed, but maybe she wasn't done teaching me. Hannah leaned forward. You ever think she was waiting for the right time to become who she really was? He turned to Nova again. Her eyes were still on the pen, always watching. You're not retiring, he said softly. You're evolving. The rain began to ease by midday. Outside, the floodwaters shimmered, but the worst had passed. Trees stood stripped, the ground littered with leaves and debris, but the cabin had held. The barn would need rebuilding, but they were all alive. That night, Jeremy moved a small mattress next to the fireplace. He didn't want Nova out of reach. He laid down with an arm over her side, listening to the pups whimper and shuffle nearby. For the first time in years, he felt something inside him loosen. Guilt, pain, fear. All of it started to melt away. "You never stopped saving lives," he murmured. "Not even mine." Nova let out a slow breath and closed her eyes. The next morning, a surprise awaited them. When Jeremy stepped outside to assess the barn damage, he found a letter pinned to his door. Written in neat handwriting was a short message. "Heard about Nova's pups. I served with her once. If you ever decide to train them, I'd be honored to take one, especially the little white one. She's already got a legend behind her name. D. Alvarez. Veteran Canine Unit." Jeremy read the note twice, then again. He walked back inside, sat beside Nova, and laid the paper on the floor. "They already know about you," he said, smiling. "Your story's spreading." Nova lifted her head slightly, tail tapping once against the wooden floor. "You think Hope's ready to follow your path?" he asked. No bark came. But she didn't need to answer. That night, as Jeremy fed Hope with a bottle and Nova watched closely from her blanket, he realized that something had changed in all of them, not just physically, but in their bones. In the firelight and the storm's wake, a family had been forged, one built on sacrifice, instinct, and the kind of love that speaks louder than words. The days after the storm passed like a gentle breeze, calmer, slower, and full of purpose. Nova's injury began to heal, though she walked with a noticeable limp now. The vet said it might never fully recover, but that didn't matter to her. Nova had never been about speed. She was about resolve, and that, Jeremy knew, remained untouched. The pups grew fast. By week 5, they were tumbling over each other in the pen, chewing on each other's tails, yipping at shadows, and pouncing on their mother's ears whenever she closed her eyes. Hope, though smaller, was no longer behind. She had found her own strength, developed a bark sharper than her siblings, and followed Nova everywhere. "She's got her mother's spirit," Hannah remarked one afternoon as she visited for a checkup. "Watch her eyes. She doesn't miss a thing." Jeremy chuckled. "She's a lot more than I expected, and exactly what I needed." Still, the letter from D. Alvarez lingered in Jeremy's mind. He sat at the kitchen table one evening, the paper unfolded in front of him again. Nova lay nearby, her head resting gently on Hope's back, both of them dozing. The rest of the pups were snoring in a sleepy pile on the blanket by the hearth. Jeremy traced the signature with his finger. He remembered Alvarez. They'd trained together briefly, years ago. Alvarez had served in some of the toughest neighborhoods in the country: Los Angeles, Detroit, Chicago. His canine, Titan, had been a legend in his own right before retiring and passing away just a year ago. Alvarez had never taken another dog after Titan. Until now. "I think he sees something in Hope," Jeremy whispered. Nova's ear flicked at the sound of her name. The next morning, Jeremy made a decision. He took a photo of Hope, sitting proudly with her ears up, head tilted slightly like she was listening to the wind. He wrote a note. "She's a fighter, just like her mother, but she's got a softness too, the kind that sees what others miss. If you're ready, I think she is too. Let's meet." He mailed it the same day. By the time the pups turned 8 weeks old, interest in Nova's legendary litter had exploded. Former officers, veterans, dog trainers, even a few parents of children with special needs began reaching out after hearing about the miracle canine mom and her rare 11th pup. Jeremy was careful with every inquiry. These weren't pets. They were potential. Nova's bloodline carried courage, loyalty, and something else that couldn't be trained. Instinct. But Hope? She was different. She wasn't the fastest or the strongest, but she paid attention. She watched everything. And when Nova walked, limping but steady, Hope followed, step for step, never once looking away. She doesn't chase chaos, Jeremy told Hannah. She waits for it. 1 week later, Alvarez arrived. He was grayer than Jeremy remembered. Broad shoulders, sun-worn face, and the unmistakable stillness of a man who had seen too much but never stopped carrying it. He stepped out of his truck and was greeted by the low rumble of Nova's warning bark, protective, not hostile. "That's her?" he asked. Jeremy nodded. "The legend herself." Nova stood, limped toward him, sniffed, then gently nuzzled his palm. She approved. "And that's Hope," Jeremy said, pointing to the white pup at her feet. Alvarez knelt slowly, letting Hope come to him. She did, without hesitation. "She's not afraid," he said. "She was born last," Jeremy said. "Almost didn't make it. Nova went back for her during the storm." Alvarez looked up. "Then she already knows what it means to be brave." They sat on the porch for hours that afternoon, talking about service, loss, and the weight that only handlers understood. Alvarez listened as Jeremy shared Nova's final mission, how she saved her pup, how she'd taught him what it meant to protect, even when no one's watching. "I never thought I'd take another dog," Alvarez admitted, rubbing Hope's ears gently. "But she's got something I haven't felt since Titan." Jeremy nodded. "She's ready. And so are you." That evening, Hope climbed into Alvarez's truck without needing to be called. Nova watched, quiet and proud. And as the engine started, she gave a single bark, short and sharp. Jeremy turned to her. "You trained her without ever needing words." Nova lay back down, her job done. And just like that, her legacy was already out there, changing the world, one pup at a time. 3 months later, the house was quieter. The days were no longer filled with the soft chaos of puppy paws and midnight bottle feedings. 10 of Nova's pups had gone on to new homes, some to canine training programs, others to families with children who needed emotional support. But their stories all carried the same thread. Every pup had something unshakable in them, a calm under pressure, a light in the dark, a piece of Nova. Only Nova remained now, curled by the fireplace as autumn winds brushed gently against the windows. Her limp had worsened, and her eyes, once sharp as blades, had grown cloudy at the edges. Jeremy noticed her struggling to rise more often. She didn't whine. She never had. But he knew. She was nearing the end of her watch. One chilly morning, Jeremy wrapped her in a warm flannel blanket and carried her outside. The pasture stretched golden beneath the sunrise. He sat with her on the porch steps, her head resting on his lap, his hand slowly stroking the soft fur behind her ears. "You gave me everything," he whispered. His voice broke. "I brought you home thinking I'd give you peace. But you gave me a reason to believe again. You saved me twice, once in the field, and again here." Nova's tail thumped once. Later that week, a letter arrived. It was from Alvarez. Inside was a photo of Hope, now in full training gear, vest fitted perfectly, standing tall beside her new handler, with that signature tilt of her head. On the back, scribbled in Alvarez's rough handwriting, were just 6 words. "She's ready. She's got your eyes." Jeremy didn't cry immediately. He sat at the kitchen table, Nova lying beside his feet, and stared at the photo for a long time. Then he got up, placed the photo in a frame, and set it on the mantel beside one of Nova's old service medals. That night, Nova slept more deeply than usual. Jeremy stayed by her side, not as her handler, but as her companion, her student, her family. And when dawn arrived, painting the room in soft gold, she didn't wake up. But her story didn't end there, because somewhere out there, in a town far away, a little white German shepherd named Hope was standing in front of a child having a panic attack. And instead of barking or pacing, she did what she had seen her mother do. She sat still, She waited. She watched. And the child, breath shaking and tears falling, reached out and held her. If this story touched your heart the way it touched ours, take a moment to breathe it in. Think about what Nova did, not just as a K-9 officer, but as a mother, a protector, and a silent teacher. She didn't ask for recognition. She didn't need words. She simply acted out of love, out of instinct, and out of courage. And in doing so, she passed something down, something bigger than commands or medals. Hope is not just a name. It's a promise, a continuation of a legacy built on sacrifice, loyalty, and the quiet strength of those who stand watch even when no one sees them. There are Novas out there in every corner of the world. Retired service dogs, shelter animals, forgotten companions, waiting for someone to believe in them again. Waiting for a second chance to love, to protect, to show us what we've forgotten in our busy lives. That real strength isn't loud. It's steady. It's patient. It's loyal to the end. So if you believe in stories that matter, if you believe in love that endures, if you believe that even the smallest heartbeat, like little hope, can change everything, then please subscribe to this channel, like this video, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a story like this one. And most importantly, share this video with someone who needs to remember that the strongest heroes don't always wear uniforms. Sometimes they have paws. Sometimes they walk with a limp. And sometimes they leave behind more than memories. They leave behind hope.